So it's January 13th. It's really cold outside, so I thought we'd have a look at what's going on in the plant room this evening. We have some really nice, healthy alocasia growing here. I have two plants. One is a bit more immature than the other one. We actually have one of the orchids in bloom right now. This is the Oncidium Hula Halau Volcano Queen, and it is nice and healthy, and it's gotten established in its pot. When I got this as a gift from an orchid vendor that I purchased another orchid from, this was in a smaller pot and I repotted it. I also repotted this one, which is the one that I actually purchased, the Nelly Isler. The pseudobulbs were really shriveled and dehydrated, so when I repotted it, I noticed that there was a lot of new growth, a new root growth, and that helped to hydrate the pseudobulbs and make them really nice and plump and get the plant established in the medium. And shortly thereafter, which would have been about 2 months ago, maybe a little bit less, it started to put out this flower spike, and now it's in full bloom, and it's been blooming since just after Christmas. You can see here I've got the humidifier going, which is basically giving us a nice humid environment around the Nelly Isler. It's 55% humidity, but I just turned on the humidifier a little while ago, so it still has to climb a bit. So this Nelly Isler should bloom in the spring of this year. We have, I'm just sorry for the unsteady cam, we have this new growth here, which once it matures and once the pseudobulb matures on this, it will produce a flower spike, fingers crossed, and we'll have a beautiful set of red blooms. So this new growth has put out a lot of roots since it was repotted, so that is always a good sign, especially for the Nelly Isler, which I understand is a more difficult to grow orchid. So I'm happy that it's getting established in its new home and its medium. Behind here we have the Bialara Big Shot Hilo Sparkle. Hopefully I said that correctly. And this was a purchase that was discounted. It was half price because it had finished blooming, the flower spike was cut off, and it was fairly dehydrated. So the pseudobulbs are still a little wrinkled, as you can see. I'm trying to get in here without moving stuff around. But it is it's a very large Oncidium type orchid. And off of one of the large pseudobulbs is the next new growth. And that's going to hopefully mature and form a nice plump pseudobulb, and from that growth we should get a flower spike. Timeline for that, I'm not so sure. Here we've got the Oncidium Space Mine Red Rendezvous. This was purchased at near blooming size. So it had a pair of pseudobulbs when I got it. They were pretty much at the same stage of growth, so I actually think this might be two orchids that are sort of stuck together. They might have been deflasked together as a pair, and then they just kept growing, because there are also now two new growths, these pseudobulbs in the front here, which are maturing at the same rate, and they seem to be at the same stage of maturity. There is a little bit of accordion shape of the leaf happening here, and that's basically due to an interruption in the watering or moisture level around the roots and supplied to the plant. So unfortunately that's a permanent effect that you can't really straighten out or smooth out the leaves, but as long as the watering and the moisture are kept consistent, that shouldn't happen too often. Here we've got the Dendrobium phalaenopsis, which I don't have an ID for this plant, this orchid, but it is a deep pinkish, hot pink. So this is the new cane here that started growing last year. It's almost the same size as the previous growth, which was behind here. The previous cane, which is already flowered a long time ago, and the spike was cut off, And this started to grow, this new cane started to grow shortly thereafter, and it should almost be done growing. And hopefully once this cane matures from the top, we should have a flower spike if everything goes well. So I'm just going to back up a little bit, show you what's going on over on the other side. Here we've got another humidifier. I've really ramped up the humidification of this room because it is primarily where I keep most of my plants. There are some plants in the rest of the house, but this is sort of a protected area. I do have a cat, so I want to keep some of the plants off limits to him when I'm not at home. When I'm home, he can come in here, but when I'm not home, I don't want him messing around with some of these more delicate plants. So this is a humidifier that I bought recently. It's from Walmart, and it's actually a fairly effective humidifier. I want to keep the humidity in the room at about 50 to 60% if possible in the winter, which when we have really cold snaps, it actually gets to be quite a challenge. So over here under the grow lights is sort of the intensive care area for the orchids that I've purchased recently, or the seedling orchids, or ones that I received as gifts of dehydrated or sickly orchids, or orchids that had finished blooming. So this is a Phalaenopsis that I received recently from a neighbor. It had finished blooming. Actually, there were a couple of blooms left, but they were very, very dehydrated. So I cut the flower stalk off and repotted it into this clay medium, which you can get at IKEA. I think it's called Hula, and it's basically a sort of a processed clay balls that seem to be quite effective at where you can grow orchids in them, and the roots are very, very happy. Right now there's not too many roots because most of them died when I transplanted them, or actually they were already dead, and I cut them off and transplanted into this new medium. So hopefully once this orchid grows some new roots, it will be a little more hydrated, because right now the leaves are quite droopy. The majority of this area is cattleya seedlings. 4 of these I purchased from the US when I was over cross-border shopping. So these are all of the Better-Gro brand, and they are small, so they're going to take about 2 to 3 years to actually get to flowering size, but they're a good investment because they are very, very affordable. And they're all different colors, so hopefully they will all bloom. I did lose one green flowered cattleya that unfortunately when I took it out of the package, because these ones, all of these guys came in pots, but they also came in mesh bags, so it's hard to kind of see and assess the health of the pseudobulbs and the roots. So unfortunately one of them did have a lot of rot. It had root rot, crown rot, and unfortunately it did not make it. But these guys, these 4, if you can see here, if I can try and I'll get in at this one here. So all of the cattleya seedlings have really nice, healthy new root growth. Some are at better ankles than others. You can see there. So that's all new growth, and that's what I want to see, because of course I repotted these as well when I got them home. Took them out of their tiny little pots, hydrated them, cut off any roots that appeared definitely dead, and then put them in these pots with new bark medium. So they're doing well. This cattleya here I purchased from a specialty orchid vendor, and again it's small, and it's gonna still take about a year to 2 years to bloom, but again it's a good investment because you don't pay a lot for this size orchid. You can grow it out in your own pot. You can get comfortable in here and not have to be repotted for 1 to 2 years, and hopefully it can grow nice and healthy during that time, put out a lot of roots, and focus its energy on growing. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And the rest here are orchids that are just getting back on their feet. They've had some setbacks, or they were dehydrated or neglected for a little while, and they're just starting to regenerate. So putting out new roots and then putting out new growth from the top as well. So that's it here. And then finally, just a quick honorable mention. It's kind of, hopefully you can see, it's a bit dimly lit at the top here, but during the day they get lots of light. I have 4 phalaenopsis up here that are all in flower spike. Even the last one here, this little guy's a little bit behind, but it's also sending out a nice flower spike. And I'm not staking these guys. So normally you would see the flower spike propped up with bamboo or plastic stake with those little miniature hair clips. But I've seen some orchid collectors online who don't stake their orchid flowers. They actually prefer the more natural cascading appearance. So I'm going to try it out with these 4. Sometimes the flower spike or the flowers themselves, once they open, can get quite heavy and weigh the spike down and actually snap it. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but we'll see. So it's a bit of an experiment. So I will keep you posted on this, and I will post an update once these are in bloom. But that is currently the situation in the plant room. And just come back here and have another look at this gorgeous Oncidium. And that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and check back again. Take care.